Light on the Coos County Conservation District. And then Mary Thibault Davis from the University of New Hampshire will be speaking with us. And then Bill will be speaking about carbon sequestration. I didn't spell that right, did I? Or is it, maybe it is sequestration. So that's what we're doing tonight. At the end of Bill's presentation tonight, we're going to be doing a survey to determine what our next step will be as far as learning about carbon sequestration. Okay, so for news tonight, we have our conservation planning grant application has been accepted. We're not really sure what that means yet, but it will be, I guess we're going to be working at least on the same level of we did this year, and we're hoping to have 3 people doing conservation planning. The NACD Northeast Regional Meeting, which has been postponed from August to November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Give people more time to get used to the COVID thing, and hopefully we'll be in a better position at that point. Also, hot off the press is the NHACD got our presentation accepted by the New Hampshire Department of Ag. We will have a virtual presentation at the New Hampshire Farm, Forest, and Garden Show on July 20th at 10:30. I got the time right, Chris?
Yeah, yes.
And we're inviting each district to make a presentation about their Legacy Award recipient at this meeting. And the details will be announced within the next 2 weeks as to how much time is going to be available and what people have to do to be prepared for that. And for tonight, please sign in with your name, conservation district, and email address. At the completion of tonight's program, a survey is going to be sent to you. The results of the survey will determine the educational programming that'll take place regarding carbon sequestering in the future. So we're going to try to get all the supervisors and district managers up to speed on what it is and what all the options are for us to become involved with carbon sequestering. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn the meeting over to Chris.
Sure, thanks. Our first part of our program tonight is the District Spotlight, which is Coos County tonight. And it's a real joy to introduce Whitney to us. Whitney, I've got to tell you, I really enjoy your vibrant newsletter, and we have a few people attending tonight, and more people are going to see this in the recording who are responsible for newsletters or newsletter articles, and we know how much work it is to put together such a vibrant newsletter as coming out of Coos under your direction now. It's awesome. I think it's also really noteworthy that this was the 30th year. Coos has for 30 years given out plant seedlings to about 2,000 people, I believe. And in spite of COVID, they were able to pull this off using Coos County volunteers and scouts. So the kids who were expecting these as part of the heritage and part of being up in Coos in 5th grade is you get one of these seedlings. So I can't imagine the amount of work and the logistics it took to put that together. But a strength that Whitney brings to Coos is probably having been there in another part of her life before being there now as the district manager. So welcome, and we appreciate the work you do putting together podcasts. So you've brought things up into the 2021 fold up there, Whitney. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing your spotlight. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. Yes, so I'm Whitney Lewis. I am the district manager for Coos County, and I put together a little presentation for you all. So I will share my screen and show you a few things. How much time do I have, Chris? Just to have an idea, about 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
A shy 10, so 5, and if it turns to 6, we don't pull you off air with a big hook or a big crane or a gong or anything. So thank you for asking, Whitney.
Okay, well, I will make sure I try to stay in that time frame, and bear with me if I kind of go a little fast or skip around a few things. Let's see, can everybody see my screen okay?
I believe so.
Okay. There we go. All right. Let me minimize you guys so I can now see my screen myself. All right, so here's just a couple tidbits about me. Our location out of Lancaster, New Hampshire, right now due to COVID, I am working from my home office, which is fine, and I go into the actual office in Lancaster after hours. My email is right here, contact information. You can check out our website. We have all kinds of really good things on there, and also our Facebook page. I try and keep that updated as well. So a few things about me. I like to know the background of people. So I figured I'd tell you my background a little bit. So I'm a Berlin, New Hampshire native, or Milan, New Hampshire native. I graduated from Berlin High. Then I attended White Mountain Community College for a year, transferred to Unity College in Unity, Maine, where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Wildlife Biology. Then I went on to Plymouth State University to get my Master's in Science Education. My husband and I are married. We have a wonderful 5-year-old daughter, which you can see. I took her up to the windmills at Jericho Mountain State Park. We're a really outdoor family, hiking, biking. We like to ride ATVs as well. You can see in the middle, we go hunting. This was our first year we took her hunting, which was really fun. And we just bought a house last year, which is very exciting. And she had her first little farm stand last year, and that helped pay for her horse lessons. So we're trying to get a little bit of that established. So this just talks about the board. I'm going to skip through that because you guys kind of know how conservation districts are set up. Coos County, this is just a quick map. You can see we range all the way down from Whitefield up to Pittsburgh. And our population in 2010 was only 33,019 people. And that's about 2.5% of the state's population. So lots and lots of woods, which is great. Our mission is to coordinate from all available sources, public and private, local, state, and federal, to develop locally driven solutions to natural resource concerns. And some of our partners, like other districts, we work a lot with NRCS, UNH Cooperative Extension, Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife Service, local schools, farmers, foresters, the newspapers, other conservation districts, of course. We worked with Flume Media in Lancaster, New Hampshire, like Chris mentioned, about some podcasts, which I'll talk about in a sec. And we work with Community Forests and other nonprofits. So we have a lot of contacts, a lot of people we work with, which is really great. So some things that we do, like Chris was mentioning, you can see a picture here. This is sending out seedlings to elementary school students in Coos County. This is partnered with UNH Cooperative Extension, and Brendan's actually on. Thank you, Brendan, for coming. This is something that he has a huge part of, and it's something that we've been doing for over 30 years, which is absolutely great. And a few other things we do are Conservation Field Day for 5th graders. We do workshops about pollinators, erosion control, vernal pools. However, in 2020, it was hard because of COVID. Some things got canceled, but hopefully this year we'll be able to offer some more things and be a little more crafty. And if we have to do Zoom things or hybrid things, we're going to make it happen one way or another, so people have that ability. So yes, I could say seedlings to schools. We also helped out with organizing a soils education class. Joe Homer's here. Thank you, Joe, for coming. So he worked with White Mountain Regional High School, the CTE Environmental Science Program, and brought forth some information on soils, which was great. We also are assisting with a high tunnel at White Mountain Regional High School. They once had one up and then it got taken down, transfer of teachers, and now the new teacher there wants to get it up. So we're trying to help her with that initiative so they can grow their own food. Lancaster Fair, I'll just say that it's awesome. You guys should definitely come sometime. And we have a booth set up there, which is great. This year, though, I'm not sure what's going to happen because my husband and I are expecting our second child on September 3rd, which is the weekend of the fair. So either the baby has to wait because of the fair, or I might not be able to make it into the fair. Another thing that I kind of got started in our area for the Milan kids, or even Androscoggin Valley kids, is a 4-H club. So we focus on general outdoor education, anywhere from agriculture, forestry, maple sugaring, woodworking, astronomy, which you can see a young 9-year-old Pat Holt is there. We worked with Tin Mountain Education Center, from Carroll County, they came up and brought us a telescope, which was great. So we could look at the moon. We also looked at, I believe it was Mars and I think Jupiter. It was really fun. We do some fundraisers and services. So we offer a spring and fall plant sale that consists of bulbs, fruits, and veggies. And my supervisors just approved us actually selling seed potatoes. So now we're starting to sell seed potatoes, which is great. And here's a picture of my 5-year-old, or our 5-year-old daughter. She's helping hand out all the fall bulb orders to customers. We have a Columbia plant nursery. It's kind of hard to see in the picture, but on the right-hand side, there's willows planted. So those are for any stream bank restoration projects or to help with erosion control. We originally applied for, well, this was based off of a Moose Plate grant before my time to get this established, which is great. However, I applied again last year to see if we could get another grant to get more stock in the nursery. We did not get it, which is a bummer. However, working with UNH agriculture field technician Nicholas Rowley to see what we can do for a next step to try and get this up and going with the limited funds that we have. Because it'd be nice to have this as a working nursery and have, I'd love to do more educational workshops there, such as wild edibles, even, more pollinator workshops. We could do a vernal pool workshop there. So just a good spot to be able to do lots of things. So one thing that I started up, and it was a great initiative with a bunch of people, Carroll County District Manager and their UNH Cooperative Extension, Grafton County, their District Manager and Cooperative Extension, us, NHACD, Jessica Wright, also NRCS and COAS, Kelly, everyone worked together to create this North Country High Tunnel series where we offered 5 different sessions on introduction to high tunnels, site selection and construction, NRCS high tunnel program. I talked about our tool rental program, high tunnel management, winter growing, and challenges. And it was really good. We had 75 people sign up, which was great. We even recorded each of these series and they're on our website if you want to watch it. And they're also on NHACD's YouTube channel as well. So a lot of people really enjoyed it, which was great. And I just sent out a survey the other day to get some feedback to see what people learned and to see what else we could offer. How am I doing for time, Chris?
I'm enthralled with your
muted.
presentation, but let's go ahead and say maybe 4 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. I have, I think, 2 more slides left, I believe. Thank you. So we do have a tool rental program. You can see here we have a 4-ton wood ash and lime spreader that we rent to farmers, and that's available on a weekly or daily basis. We also have a big tool shed of tools such as hoop benders, post drivers, broad forks, things like that. So if you're interested, please let us know, and more information on our website. One thing we just found out this week last week, we were able to get a grant. Thank you to the Neil and Louise Tillotson Fund of New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. So they are funding our project to purchase a 10-foot Great Plains no-till drill. We're super, super excited. The farmers are really excited. We also allow Essex County, Vermont to rent it as well. So the farmers there. And excuse me, sorry. I feel like I'm talking really fast. We already have an event planned for May where farmers can be trained on this drill and then they can start renting it, which is awesome because we've had at least 8, 10, 12 people already reach out to me saying, hey, I want to rent this. So it's really, really good. We did a demonstration back in November, and this was when the farmers were like, hey, can you get this? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll definitely try. And luckily we were able to get it. So it's great. We're very thankful. Berry Conservation Camp. So I won't go into details, but we do sponsor youth to attend Berry Conservation Camp in the summer. It's a wonderful camp up here in Coos County. If you haven't heard of it, then please definitely look it up. It's great for kids, all outdoor based. So we're super excited to be able to offer that. All right, so North Country Conservation Series podcast, like Chris was talking about. So we're super excited to announce this. Hopefully everybody knows what a podcast is. I won't go in detail because we're running out of time. But I was able to do this at Flume Media in Lancaster, and I was able to do it with Lieutenant Wayne Saunders. He's a retired Fish and Game Conservation Officer in charge of Operation Game Thief. And he has his own podcast, Warden's Watch. So if you're into those things, definitely listen to his Warden's Watch podcast, and you'll definitely want to check out this podcast. He was great. I worked with Andrew Schaefermeyer from New Hampshire Fish and Game. He's a fisheries biologist up here. And Dave Falkenham, he's a forester up here as well for New Hampshire and Vermont. And we talked about an introduction to them and their jobs, how they got to where they are today. We got into more conservation job specific questions, a reflection on the history of Coos County and what to expect in the future. So it's a little bit long. It's 3 different episodes, but it's great to listen to in the car, or if you're just at home, you just want to listen to something. It's definitely great. Please check it out. It's something I've never done before. I didn't even know what a podcast was beforehand, but it's really good. So if you can check it out, it's on our website under announcements. And I think you'll get a couple giggles, because if you know these men, they're very silly. And some more great things in the works. This will just be my last one. I'm hoping to do more podcast episodes, more equipment demonstrations, definitely more workshops. I'd like to try to get more involved with the local farmers markets, try and get more grants to try to offer more equipment to local farmers with whatever they need. I would like to create a local food guide for Coos County, which is something Merrimack has done. So someday in the future, I'd like to do that. And I also have a couple other ideas, but I'm not going to share those just yet, because I know those will probably be to happen after the baby. So, but definitely be on the lookout. And like Chris said, you can sign up on our website for our newsletter if you want to stay up to date on news and events and other fun things, because there's a lot of good things planned for the future for Coos. So I'm very excited to share it with everybody.
Well, your enthusiasm certainly comes through your voice and your presentation and your approach to your slides, Whitney. Thank you. And with those goals that you just articulated to us, I think you'll find through NHACD and other organizations that you'll meet or connect with, or other district managers, ways to help you reach those goals. So everybody's here to help everybody and network any ways we can. So keep us informed. And I felt particularly motivated thinking about the podcast. So thank you for all that work. Any questions for Whitney? Or Whitney, if you want to put in chat, or if you already did, your email address, so people will figure out how to get a hold of you if they have some more specific questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks. Great spotlight, Whitney. Thank you. And from Yeah, thank you. And from Whitney's presentation, I learned the connection that Whitney, and nice segue to Mary, since they both have in their background science education and working with students in schools and public school loss, but certainly our gain on the conservation side to have both these people involved in different ways with conservation efforts and conservation organizations and whatnot. So that's an interesting tie that you two have together. Mary is a natural resources field specialist. I have to look at my notes because the titles I know I need to get correct for UNH Cooperative Extension. Mary's college degrees are in environmental conservation, education, and permaculture certification. Remarkable thing is that she leads 400 natural resource stewards and big tree volunteers throughout the state. So Whitney, a couple times you said up here. We think that through podcasts and newsletters, you're bringing Coos a little closer, and we're all getting a little closer to each county. So thanks for that. And Mary's work with 400 volunteers across the state's really interesting. Mary's flexibility to work with inner city, marginalized pieces of property, derelict pieces of property, and turning them into viable community gardens is remarkable, because she can turn around and be way out in Quincy Bog looking at carnivorous little plants and bog plants and old big trees. So there's a lot of flexibility required with her interest in nature and with her interest in working with people and getting people involved in nature. Whoa, I am not sure what's going on. Well, I don't know what that is. Do people hear something about lake houses?
No, I don't hear anything about.
Oh,
lake
perfect.
houses.
Okay, it's all in my head. That's good. Mary took over the helm of the natural resources in 1991. So she's in her 30th year. And there was recently a proclamation from the governor honoring Mary for those 30 years with the ecological efforts, ecological gardens, mapping areas of endangered plants, and the list goes on for far longer than I would take in this whole hour to introduce Mary. So Mary, what do you have for us about what's going on with Extension? That's what you're here to tell us about.
Thank you so much, Chris. I just feel like I should turn it over to you. You've got it all down. First of all, I just wanted to say, Whitney, you're doing amazing work. And I love the partnerships that we make in New Hampshire, because that's really what New Hampshire is all about. All of us, working together, all our different conservation organizations coming together to make things happen. And man, I want some of those programs. I might have to move north just for your programs, Whitney.
Thank you.
Anyways, as Chris said, I work for UNH Cooperative Extension. I'm based out of Hillsborough County, but focused primarily really in the southern part of the state, because my job is really urban and community natural resource work. So where we kind of look at it, my cat just jumped up on the table here. So excuse for the interruption if he comes right across the screen. So I kind of think about it as the urban triangle of the state that I really focus my time in, where most of the population is. And, people don't think about the natural resources so much in Manchester, but they're all there, forests and soils and wildlife. There's just a dominant population of people. So sometimes those are the places that actually need more help. And one of the big ways that I do that through Cooperative Extension is I coordinate the Natural Resource Stewards Program, which are volunteers from 18 to 80, everything in between, who take a 12-week course, and then on all kinds of natural resource topics, everything from tree ID and plant ID and growing healthy soils and plants, water quality, wildlife, permaculture, ecological landscaping, the list goes on. And it's a 12-week course that begins in September every year. And our new home is kind of in the central part of the state, though south, especially compared to Coos, but at Canterbury Shaker Village, which is an amazing place to hold a class. It's 700 acres. It's a National Historic Site and Museum, and really one of the state's treasures. And that's been our new home for the Stewards Program for the past few years, and that will continue. So once our volunteers go through that training, then they go out and work in all kinds of conservation and natural resource projects throughout the state. When we count up the hours and topics every year, people get to choose from over 50 different categories of work. They might be working in a community garden. They might be doing trails in a forest, wildlife monitoring, recycling, you name it, they're out there doing it. And if you want to ask one specifically about that, Chris Blackstone right here is one of our stewards. Surprise, surprise. She just has a great educational mind and loves to keep learning. So anyways, I have a short little video that I'm going to share with you, and it kind of shows you a little bit more about the stewards. So if you don't mind, I'll share my screen. Let's see here. Share the sound. Let's see. Works. Everybody see that? And So that gives you a little bit of a taste about the program and what our volunteers do. I want to point out, I just want to share my screen one more time to our website. Let's see. So you can come onto this website and learn more about the Natural Resource Stewards Program. Just scrolling down here, you don't have to have any experience, you just have to love the outdoors and want to make a difference, and that's what it's all about. You can apply right online, and we still have room for our September class at Canterbury Shaker Village. So I can put in the chat afterwards the actual link to the website. One of the things that you did see in that little video was people measuring trees. And that's because our volunteers also run the New Hampshire Big Tree Program. And if you watched any of the media this week, you saw the poor demise of the tree, the sugar maple in Kensington. That was our the biggest sugar maple in the whole country. And unfortunately, it, just natural causes and storms, it's just had to come down this week. But people are so excited about big trees, and you can help volunteer there too. We have county teams all over the state made up of total volunteers. We have about 60 volunteers in that program, and they're out there measuring and recording and finding the biggest trees of each species in the state. And just recently, we created this map so people can go view them. And let's see, here we go. So this is our New Hampshire Big Tree map. And what you do here is, these are our public trees that anybody can go view. We've actually recorded over 1,100 trees, but many are on private land. But here we click on the honey locust here in Cornish, and you scroll down and you see that it's at St. Gaudens Historic Site. It gives the measurements of the tree and location. And there's more information here about the Big Tree Program itself, how to nominate a tree if you see them, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to just show you that quickly. And the other big thing that I guess I might mention that's consuming my life at this moment are community gardens. And I do a lot of work in creating community gardens in Manchester, and have kind of done that since the early 90s, where Manchester is a focus of a lot of my work. But as a result of COVID, in the increased food insecurity out there, we realized that there was no one really coordinating community gardens throughout the state. So we created another map so people could help find community gardens, and we just launched that. And I'm going to share that one here. And you can see, here we go. We have a directory of all the community gardens. This is a map where you can zoom in and out. I just pulled it up to Rockingham County. And if we zoom in to the Newmarket Community Garden here, and we even have a little picture of it, or a series of pictures in Newmarket. And then we can learn everything about it. And if, for instance, let's see, I'm just going to click on that. Oops. And we scroll down here, and I find the cost of it, who to contact. That's Maggie Shire. A little history about the garden, and talking about no-till. They do no-till beds, and all the physical attributes of the garden, including that they have a beehive and some of the things that they grow. So this is a great resource for people looking to garden, and it's also a great resource for community garden organizers, because I'm already seeing people share ideas and For instance, at the Manchester Community College Garden, we have a whole forest garden orchard. And so people are interested in starting that where it's not just the individual beds, but we have layers of plants that are providing fruit and herbs and medicinals and nuts. And so a great place for people to share. So with that, I guess I'll just kind of open it up to any questions anybody might have. Or Chris, do you, as a steward, and you know a lot about my program, if there's anything you think we should talk about that I haven't?
I would say a noteworthy aspect of your program is that it's got a curriculum. You set out, you know, each week, what are the themes and what are the goals, but it's not stagnant. So what I might have done for my 12 weeks is going to look a little different than what are people doing now 14 years later with their time with you. So the fact that you morph and change, and you might be focusing more on permaculture now, where back in the day it was a novel concept that happened far away, you know. And the volunteer projects are designed to be extremely meaningful. That you get homework. Mary gives homework. I guess that's residual from having been a school teacher, but the homework is expected to really do problem solving. So I think it's a wonderful challenge for adults to not just go and sit and listen and see pretty pictures of things that we're going to go see on a field trip, but really have to put your mind to something, and true learning is taking place, which is a real treat. Because in a lot of volunteer organizations, the learning is more like, how do you record your hours? Or what happens if you don't show up on time? This is real learning about the human and natural world cross-hatching. So
in fact, Chris, let me just talk a little bit more about that, and I might share one piece of one more video. One of, 2020 and going into 2021, what a difficult year for so many of us, the whole world, in fact, but there are silver linings. And one of the silver linings that we found with the natural resource stewards was that we totally changed our curriculum again. In fact, last year at this time, I think I was on plan B and we went to plan C. So I planned the class 3 times last year, but to the benefit of it, because now on Fridays, we are totally outdoors at this amazing place. And all of the learning is experiential, hands-on, and outdoors. And instead of so much traditional homework, people are prepping for the class ahead of time, online, at home, during their own time. We have resources for them to look at. And then we come in together on Fridays and they get to apply it together outside. So why don't, do I have a minute or two left? Or
we'll say 2.
Okay. Okay, let me that's fine. I just want to share a little bit of this video just to give you a picture of our home for those of you who haven't been there or need a reminder of how beautiful it is. And we'd love for you to join us. So let's see, I can just find it right here. Yeah. And this was put together 2 years ago by one of our natural resource stewards. So I won't play it all, just a couple snippets of it so you can kind of get a
For these days I'll go
that gives you a taste. I think you saw some familiar faces there. And I want to say that we've partnered with the conservation districts for years and love to train the volunteers that then go work for you in the conservation districts. It's not just for extension, it's for everyone. They can choose their projects and volunteer for whoever they want, but have a good foundation as to what they're volunteering in. So we welcome anybody to join us. Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Mary, I just wanted, Donna Help from Belknap County. I just wanted to thank you again for all the great work you do in partnering, and do a little testimonial, because to your graduates, because we were in a pinch. We had a great volunteer coordinator, and he was a single parent trying to be our New Hampshire Envirothon coordinator and have 3 kids at home as a single parent, and he couldn't do it all. So I said, we need an interim Envirothon coordinator, and one of your graduates, Kyle Fennell, stepped up, and he's just doing a phenomenal job with helping us and our steering committee do the Envirothon as a remote training, and now a remote competition, and he's doing a great job. And we also went to one of your graduates to help us as our we started a partnership program to have a volunteer coordinator for the county, and one of your other graduates stepped up and helped with that as well. And she's going to move on to other things, so we're going to need another down the road. So we know where to go now to find really talented, energetic, creative folks that know how to make things happen. So Mary, thank you for that legacy as well as
Thank
all
you
the
so much,
wonderful learning that your graduates have had. But
Oh, well,
if you
thank
need
you.
help, go check with Mary. She's probably got somebody that can she can hook you up with.
Sure. And send your volunteers through me. Anybody who wants to learn, they are more than welcome to join. Yeah.
Oh, that's very rewarding to hear all this. Thank you, Donna, for that backstory too, about other connections to Mary and the natural resource stewards. And every steward really looks back to Mary for the stories each of us have about something that she did special for each of us as individuals and collectively. That's the huge thing. So thank you, Mary Tebow Davis. Really, really wonderful to have you tonight. You want to make sure that your chat includes your contact info for people so that we can connect, as Donna said.
I'll put that in there.
Thank you. And our next guest tonight for this Zoom in show is Bill Fosher. Bill has been farming for more than 30 years using intensive rotational grazing during that entire time, and can tell us about the positive impact that ruminants grazing on well-managed perennial pastures can have on soil health and the surrounding environment. In his day job as a conservation planner working for the NHACD group, Bill Fosher works with farmers in New Hampshire to help them improve their soil health through grazing and agronomic practices. In his other life, Bill raises livestock, primarily sheep, but also cattle, hogs, and poultry, and has a home garden that keeps growing larger. I don't know if anybody that really diminishes their home gardens. Maybe you get more containers on your patio, but a garden does not diminish. He has served the last 9 years as a supervisor on Cheshire County's Conservation District and has served on the Surrey and Westmoreland Conservation Commissions. He's the former president of Granite State Graziers, where he served on the board of directors for 10 years. We're welcoming Bill tonight to share information with us, and can't thank you enough, Bill, for putting on a different hat and being here tonight with that information for us all.
All right, happy to switch hats as need be. I wanted to give one little update that I guess Dick didn't get the email before he logged in. We did hear today from the National Association of Conservation Districts or actually it was late yesterday, that we have been approved to hire a third planner. We just need to kind of go through the fine print and make sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But it looks like our little conservation planning program is going to grow another notch. So with that, I am going to try to share my screen. It worked before before we started live, so I'm hoping that it's going to work now for real. Are you guys seeing my screen with the role of carbon in healthy soils?
Yes, and a beautiful close-up of a little seedling too. Thank you.
Okay, great. And I'd encourage everybody, you know, it's a small enough group that if you've got questions, or want to participate in some other way to, you know, throw a tomato at me or whatever, feel free to unmute yourself and just chime right in. Don't feel you have to wait until the end or put your questions in the chat, because I can't see the chat anyway. So I'm going to start out with a pop quiz, because that's the way to get everybody's attention, because you will be marked on this. What is the most important agricultural tool invented in the last 200 years? Anybody want to throw out a guess? I guess this is kind of a matter of opinion, but it's my opinion, and that's what counts, because I'm the one that's going to give out the grades. It's not the tractor, and it's not the combine harvester. It is the moldboard plow.
I said plow. No adjectives, just plow.
So this thing was invented by, or the modern version of it actually was invented by a blacksmith by the name of John Deere, who grew up in Rutland, Vermont. As was the case for a lot of young men in the early part of the 1800s, he decided to make his fortune by heading out west and settled in Illinois, where he set up an assembly line to make thousands and thousands of plows that were made out of steel, smooth steel, so they were self-cleaning and they could be mass manufactured. The basic design that John Deere developed in the 1830s and 40s really hasn't changed to this day. There's been a lot of minor improvements in it, but this thing that turns the soil over and shatters the clumps and makes it just the way people want for planting is basically the same machine that he invented back in the day. And just to show you how important it is, there it is, right on the seal of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Might not surprise you to know that I'm not a fan of the moldboard plow. This scene here is from the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, which gave birth to the conservation movement, of course. So, you know, there's your silver lining, but man, was there some clouds to get that silver lining going, right? This is the moldboard plow, more than any other single thing, caused the Dust Bowl. And it caused that by inverting the soil, shattering the soil aggregates, incorporating air into the soil, and giving the soil microbes, you know, we're plowing down the prairie, the soil was just full of life, basically putting all of the soil life on overdrive so that it burned off all of the carbon. And then the soil started to very quickly die and become just basically this dust that could get picked up by the winds and blown away. So in the last, really sort of coming to a head now, but the last probably 30 to 40 years, there's been a lot of interest in what we can do in agriculture to keep soils healthy. And there's been a recognition of carbon as a really important part of that. And the carbon cycle plays into all the parts of this, these principles of soil health. So the first one is to keep the soil covered at all times. You never really want to see bare ground, because bare ground is ground that's going to be compacted by rainfall, and that's going to make it more likely to erode either by wind or by water. Obviously, if you got a nice field that's all covered with this kind of a cover crop, the wind's not going to get down there to the surface to pull at that soil and start pulling it away. The next major principle of soil health is to keep living roots in the soil. The roots are what keeps the soil microbes fed and keeps them holding the soil together into what we call a stable aggregate. And that's that sort of cottage cheese texture that you'll see in really nicely formed and very healthy soils. So there's little crumbly bits, the size of a peanut to the size of a walnut that just hold together, that are really, they're glued together by that soil life, and that all comes from having the roots in the soil. The more months out of the year you can have living roots in the soil, the happier your soil is going to be. The third one, the third soil health principle, is to minimize disturbance. And I like this picture because it shows two very different ways of planting corn right next to one another. The field on the right, they're using a no-till planter with, I'm sorry, field on the left. I don't know my right from my left most of the days, but so the field with the tractor on it is being planted by a no-till planter that has a roller crimper in front of each row. So it's going to take that cover crop and it's going to lay it down and crimp so that it should at least be severely stunted, if not dead. And then each row planter creates a little tiny tilled zone where it drops the seed in and then covers it back up. And then compare that to the field on the actual right, on my other right, where it's been moldboard plowed, which is the sort of traditional New Hampshire way of getting ready for planting corn. And you see that soil is flipped over, it's bare to the sun, it's bare to the rain, it's compacted, it'll warm up fast, and the planter will go through it nicely, and they'll get a good stand of corn on it. But they're really harming their soil health by having it lying bare like that until the corn can get up high enough to cover it over. And then the final point of the principle of soil health is to keep to maximize biodiversity. And this picture shows that on a couple of different levels. You've got something that you don't usually see in cropping systems. You've got livestock right there on a crop field, and what they're eating is a cover crop mixture that has, I can count at least 6 different components there. There's oats and millet and a sun hemp and some clover and a forage soybean. So there's all kinds of biodiversity going on here. And what that does is it supercharges the photosynthetic action of this cover crop, and it makes it pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, puts it into the plant, and the plant puts things into the root. The livestock being there stimulate the regrowth of that cover crop when they graze it. and that can add more carbon to the soil. So what we're finding as we learn more about the role that carbon plays in soil, this is a slide from the Nature Conservancy, and so we talk about carbon sequestration as being an important thing that we're going to be looking at doing. And just for its own sake, for pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and tucking it away safely in the soil, there's a lot of benefit to that. If you think about, I don't want to go too far into the technology of it, but if a typical crop field might be 1 or 2 or maybe 3% organic matter in the topsoil. The prairie soils, before they were put to the plow, were 3 or 4 times that much organic matter, and half of organic matter is carbon. So we've released, every time we plow a field, we release carbon into the air because all of those microbes are burning it off in the process of releasing all of the nutrients that are going to make the field seem very productive, but it's kind of a flash. Whereas with this soil health system, we're keeping that carbon in place and we're building it over time, and getting the maximum benefit of it, both in terms of the overall environment and greenhouse gas control, but also it's helping with the ability of the soil to infiltrate rainfall, to hold on to water that falls in rain cycles, and it makes for a better environment for the living organisms in the soil. It helps the soil hold more air, be more porous, and that helps the roots of plants access the nutrients in the soil better. Over the long run, it makes a farm much more resilient to have a high level of soil organic matter. You can get through droughts better. You can get through rainy spells better. You're less likely to have crop failures. You're less likely to have gullies eroding on the edges of fields, all because that rainfall is sort of managed by the soil. And there's a few things that have been coming out. New Hampshire NRCS is kind of leading the way with a couple of on-farm practices that are available for cost share. They're doing a soil carbon amendment practice, which is an interim practice, which means it's basically on a trial basis for the next 3 years. And they're one of a handful of states that have adopted this just to try to make sure that that it gets a good a good look-see by the agricultural community. And what's interesting about the soil carbon amendment program is that it's going to be helping farmers to get out of the mindset of everything that I put into the soil has to be feeding a plant, and getting more into the mindset of I need to feed my soil. So if you look at this slide, there's a lot of different materials that have had biochar made out of them. And biochar is basically any kind of burnable material that has been burned in the absence of oxygen. So it's kind of like charcoal. And this stuff can last in the soil for, kind of indefinitely. It's not chemically reactive. It's the same kind of stuff that archaeologists use to date somebody's, a fire pit that they come across in a First Nations settlement, to say, okay, this carbon is 10,000 years old or 25,000 years old. That's how long that's the sort of scale we're talking about in terms of how long this is going to last on the soil. And so this is definitely not there to feed your plants. It's there to feed, or actually to provide a home for the soil organisms that feed your plants. So that's pretty exciting to me as a soil health nerd to be seeing a way that we can start doing that. The other thing that's really exciting to me about biochar is that one of the things that it needs is stuff to burn. And if you look at what people around the state have told their conservation districts and NRCS and the local working groups, I think every county identified a lack of markets for low-grade hardwood as a major issue that their landowners were facing. And it seems to me like we've got an awful lot of low-grade firewood or hardwood and softwood standing here in New Hampshire that needs to be managed somehow. And this could potentially represent a market for that low-grade wood. Right now, it's available in tote sacks and by the truckload and so forth. It's fairly expensive. As you can see by these prices here, these prices are probably about a year old. I think I first saw this slide about a year ago. So it's, I think there's some real room for forest land owners to be excited about what's going on in the farmland again. So, and then this is some information about the different ways that the soil carbon amendment practice can be applied at the farm level. And then this is who I am and my coworker Jess up in the North Country, who was mentioned as part of that High Tunnel series, and is almost as much of a soil nerd as I am, but I'm bringing her along fast. So I'd be happy to take any questions, or I know I kind of buzzed through that, but I wanted to try to stay under time, and I think I just am making it barely.
Does anyone in the group have a question? I have one that you can, I hope, just give a quick answer to it. I'm not exactly sure how to word this. I kind of feel like a kindergarten kid right now. You showed a picture of cattle grazing, and there were 5 or 6 kind of plants, and they were like, the cows were up to their shoulders or up to their necks in these plants. So if you have those cattle, I come along, I buy some, I take them to my farm. But I don't feed them that way. I feed them in a different way, a more traditional way that we're trying to get away from maybe. Is it hard on them, or should there be a transition period? I'm just thinking, like, if I have a cat, if I needed to change its food, you're supposed to do it slowly and like once a day, and then, slowly get the cat into the new food. Do you change the animals feeding like that? Or how do you get them used to the new school of feeding or grazing?
Absolutely. Especially with ruminant animals, it's really important to change diet slowly, especially if you're going from a forage-based diet to one that includes grain. When you're, it's sort of the way I'm talking about feeding the soil versus feeding the plants. You're actually, when you're feeding a ruminant animal like a cow or a sheep or goat or a deer, you're actually feeding the microbes in its rumen as much as you're feeding the animal. And so you need to give the rumen some time to adjust its balance of microflora and fauna to be able to digest the new feed. So it's even a slower process than it is with your cat, because your cat only has one stomach and it just has to change a couple of enzymes. It happens relatively quickly. But yeah, certainly is something that people need to consider. It's a lot easier to change a ruminant from grain to grass than the other way around, but it still requires a transition.
But we want them to go from grain to grass. So this is good, but it's the easy direction, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Bill, what do
Bill,
you
I have a
see
quick
as-
question,
Go
if
ahead.
that's all right. I saw that, I think it was your last slide, you had some application rates listed on there, and I'm curious whether that's what it was, but also if there was something on there about how often you have to do this. Is this an annual application, every 5 years, what is it?
The idea is that this material is applied in response to a soil health management system plan that's developed in advance. So there would be some soil testing. There'd be some discussion of what are the restriction points on your soil health metrics, yeah. So that was that's it's a good question. The rate is going to depend on that use, and it's also going to depend on how frequently you need to do it. Is going to depend on kind of where you're starting and where you're trying to get to. I don't think you'd want to put too much biochar down all at once, because it's just going to kind of lock on to all of the nitrogen that your plants need in order to grow. Carbon and nitrogen attract one another, and you don't want to lock up the nitrogen that your plants need too much.
Bill, what do you see as the possibilities of conservation districts being involved with the carbon sequestration?
Well, they're already doing a lot, right? The no-till drill that Whitney showed us earlier today is a classic example of a tool that farmers can use to avoid, to help to minimize the disturbance of soil. And the no-till corn planters that belong to several of the districts are another example of that. Wood ash and lime spreader that the Coos district has, and Cheshire County has one, and I think there might be one over on the seacoast. Dick, you would know better probably than
Yeah,
me.
we have one over here.
Yeah. Those could also be used to spread biochar if it was processed properly. So there are there's a lot going on there. There's also a lot that that the districts are doing in terms of just sort of education and outreach, for letting farmers know about different soil health events and practices, and demonstrating. I believe that photograph that I showed of the tractor pulling the no-till corn planter took place at the Grafton County farm, for example. So, the Grafton County Conservation District was an important partner in getting that done as well. So, there are a lot of ways that the districts are already participating, and I think there are a few more that might be coming down the pike. The ecosystem services aspect of carbon sequestration, the ability to control stormwater, the ability to draw down carbon out of the atmosphere, et cetera, is starting to get monetized out in the Midwest now. It's kind of early days of that, but it is happening. And at some point it's going to start finding its way east. And I think one of the challenges that particularly New Hampshire farmers are going to have in tapping into that is going to be that we're small, and in order to get acres of activity going, we may find that it would make sense to group farms together into some sort of a cooperative entity. And I can see the conservation districts potentially playing a role in that, to kind of aggregate our resource or ecosystem services into a bundle that can then be more reasonably marketed. Whereas, one farm in Iowa might be able to give them, 4,000 or 5,000 acres of carbon sequestration. It would take a lot of New Hampshire farms to do that. I'm sure there are plenty of ways that I haven't thought of either. The districts are really good at coming up with ideas, and they're close to their farmers, and the farmers are the best source of ideas ever. So.
Any other questions from this Zoom room? Donna, it looks like you were about to ask one. Go for
Yeah,
it.
this is kind of a dumb one, and maybe Mary might be better to answer this. I don't know. I'm just thinking that a lot of the learning sometimes happens, in what we can do in our backyard. So are there some good tools or examples of some of these techniques that we could use with home gardeners to just help them kind of understand the principles? Because I think it's one of those things where if you can show people something on a small scale, it sometimes helps them be able
I know
to
I can
understand the
speak
bigger
for,
picture.
I'm sorry, Donna, you froze there, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I can speak for Cheshire County. I know that there's a sort of smaller scale soil health tool system, and COAS obviously has a very extensive hand tool library. And basically, Cheshire, there's a two-wheel tractor that has some version of almost every soil health implement available, that's scaled down, not quite to the home garden scale, but to the less than 1 acre scale for sure, half acre. It's a pretty accessible idea. And then I know for some of the workshops that the districts have run have been aimed at translating some of this information, particularly cover cropping, to the home gardeners. The idea of putting a cover crop on a bed as soon as the stuff comes out of it, rather than putting your whole garden to bed one time in November when it's too late to get a cover crop in. And I see Richard Miller's hand is up.
Yeah, and I guess my question isn't so much to you as to Becky Ross. And when you suggested that there be a collaborative effort from farmers of small scale to bring out a proposal for carbon sequestration credit on a larger quantity, I wondered how receptive NRCS would be to something along those lines.
That's a great question, Richard. And I don't know if it's going to be NRCS led, but it will certainly be within USDA led, where we look at some sort of carbon credits and payment for those. I would say CSP may be our most conservation stewardship program, may be the best foot we have forward right now. But I know that in headquarters, they're meeting almost daily, if not, or weekly, and if not daily, with staffers and congressionals on the Hill to try and determine what that path forward is going to be.
I think it's a great idea, and I really like to see it come to fruition.
I think we will see it come to fruition definitely very soon. They are moving fast and as quick as possible to get something rolled out, because we believe we've got momentum on our side to take advantage of this, and especially with the soil health movement. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Bill, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's, I wonder about the opportunity to look, as people are looking at carbon markets. It's one of those things of what you can do to help folks locally. So just like we want to have people buy New Hampshire, if there's some ways that we can, you know, monetize or help prioritize sequestration in your home state and have companies that are looking for carbon credits be able to invest locally. You know, so I think there might be some interesting pieces to that.
Donna, just to address your kind of earlier question too about New Hampshire and home gardeners and small farms. One resource I would look to is the permaculture community. There's a bunch of permaculture meetups in New Hampshire, and until COVID, we were having an annual conference each year, and biochar has, you know, been one of the topics for a long time. And, you know, that's definitely more small scale, backyard and small farm. So that's just another good resource.
One thing I would say also is that so far the carbon sequestration ecosystem service payment schemes that I've seen in the Midwest have been driven by private actors, basically people who want or companies that want a supply chain where they can say, you know, this tortilla chip is carbon neutral or something along those lines. And so that's what's driving it right now, is consumer interest in carbon neutrality as a you know, kind of a stamp of approval. That level of the only crop system that we even have here that they would be interested in looking at would be alfalfa and corn silage grown for dairy cattle. They're not interested in anything outside of the commodity world. They're talking maybe about adding potatoes into that at some point, but for now it's all corn, soybeans, cotton, and peanuts are the crops that they're looking at on the private sector side. So certainly having USDA get involved and broaden the horizons of that would be a wonderful, you know, wonderful advent, and it would certainly help New Hampshire to get into the game.
Could I speak a little bit on this? It's Dennis Ward. On the Farm Bureau side of things, we had a conversation with Secretary Vilsack a couple of weeks ago, and he is very interested in the carbon credits or whatever. The issues that they're having in it with these private entities getting into it is that the farmer's not getting the full dollar value the private entities are getting it. And he agreed and said that with us that small farmers ought to be able to participate in a program somehow. And he also said that they weren't going to do something that didn't send the bulk of the money to the farmers rather than to these private entities that are trying to get, or brokers or somebody that's trying to get in the middle. But they are working hard. It's one of their top priorities, as Becky said, to get this going. And hopefully, it seems like from Farm Bureau perspective, they're looking out for small farmers as well as large farmers. So that bodes well for us here in New England. So.
Well, we've exceeded our time for the evening. We've lost a few people along the way. If you've signed in with your email address, you're going to get a survey sent to you so that we need to know what to address next for information, so that when the monetization comes through, we have a clear understanding as a group of supervisors and district managers what's out there and how to deal with it. And then, like, when we get the 3 weeks to put a grant together, we're all prepared and ready to go. So if you haven't signed in yet, please do so. And I guess we'll leave it at that, and we'll see you next month.